Dublin beat Galway over the weekend 216 to 115. Kerry saw off Roscommon 215 to 112. And it just occurs to me that every single week, Brendan, we're talking about how brilliant Con O'Callaghan is and how brilliant David Clifford are. I mean, as an inside forward yourself, a joy to watch.
Yeah, certainly. And I think in the arms race, Shane, the forward play has gone through the roof compared to defenders. I think the blanket defence has stopped man-to-man markers. And now, as the forwards have got better and better, once the game has started to open up as it has now, it's phenomenal stuff. And you said the two boys, anything seems possible. I remember just thinking about myself and looking at them. If either of those players had a wide early on or have a bad miss, you can just tell it's water off a duck's back. Whereas you seen before, we forwards, if went down there, you could see pressure building in people and that. The modern forwards now, just everything's at their mercy in terms of, those players. There just doesn't seem a possibility they'll have a bad game. If anything, they'll just play okay or they play brilliant. But I thought the goal from Clifford there was so like a slam dunk from one bro to the next day. The setup play, it was, you would see in the NBA week out. And I suppose that was what propelled Kerry on the victory in that match too. And very plucky performance from Roscommon, you'd have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Declan, like when you see these two lads, the fact they never panic during the game. Last week, Clifford had a quiet spell for maybe 25 minutes against Dublin. Then he takes over. Con, for example, against Galway, I thought he had a quiet first half, then takes over the game. Like these guys at such a young age, they're so patient and then so devastating.
Yeah, mentally they've got it. Mentally, there's so much that goes more into it than anything else. I mean, you even going back to all these young players now have had exposure to performance coaches and sports analysis and all the rest, that they come almost like by the time they're 21. Like, I mean, what age even is David Clifford? Like 21. I mean, they're all already the full package at that point. It's an astonishing thing. It is also a feature really of modern day coverage that we're able to talk about Con and David Clifford in a rivalry sense, because there's been other sort of the best forwards of their era, say like for example a Mickey Linden and a Peter Calvin. But the way games are covered now, if you just simply can't miss it. Like before there was no League Sunday, say in that era in the 90s. If you didn't see that game or if you didn't go to it, then you wouldn't have seen it. Now everybody's seeing these things instantly. So if David Clifford scores, it's on Twitter within minutes. Same with Con O'Callaghan then. So you get to see, we are spoiled in this era, whatever about modern technology and whatever else it has. It has given us such a greater scope to watch and consume Gaelic football.
Do you think, Declan, that I know from Con O'Callaghan from club training, his physical power is unbelievable, as is his decision making. What is it about Clifford that makes him so good? Is it what's up there, or innate skills, or what is it?
Everything has awareness. Like, I mean, I remember watching him play in the Hogan Cup final against St. Pat's Mahara, and I remember his coach, whose name escapes me now, saying after that game that the question was asked, like, is this guy, could he be as good as Maurice Fitzgerald? And he said about a 17-year-old, I think he's better. I honestly think he's better than Maurice Fitzgerald. It's the sort of thing that makes you kind of cringe a wee bit for the manager, saying, like, how can you say such a thing? And how could you argue against it now? I think that it's just his balance is just insane. His ability he's tall, he's got all that. Like, I mean, he's not quite as powerful as Con O'Callaghan, and it may be a mistake if he developed that kind of barrel-chestedness of Con O'Callaghan. They're two very different physiques, so you have to kind of go with what you have. He's rangy, tall, he incredibly strong, long-limbed. But I think it was Val Andrews that was pointing out different things about the way Val drills down on his scores, and he was pointing out how if David Clifford wanted to shoot off his left, he'll bounce the ball with his right hand, so he'll bounce it across his body, so he'll lean in into the shot then if it's coming in from the left, and if he's coming shooting from the right, he'll bounce with his left hand. So the transfer of the ball almost transfers the power of where he's standing with his body. And I mean, it is, I tell you what, fair play to Val for picking it out, but it's one of those things that if you tried to coach, it would be very hard. I think it's just instinct for them. I think, honestly, when he's playing, he is just playing on pure instinct.
Do you think that, Brendan? Like, do you think these guys think about their game and visualize? You often hear this about players, or is it just instinct?
Well, you didn't worry about what hand I was going to bounce the ball with. I had only 1 foot to kick with, and even that mightn't work half the time. So I don't think anybody was analysing me the way Decky was talking about there. But yeah, I just when it comes to Clifford in particular, honestly, you talk about once-in-a-lifetime players. I mean, that quote from Marshall Gerald, I actually had no doubt from the first few times I've seen him, just everything about him. And as Decky says there, sometimes players can get bottled up if they're impactful or they need a certain type of play, if they're aerially strong, or if they need to run at people in terms of getting shut down. But he has a bit of everything. But his composure and his ability to kick off 2 feet, it is phenomenal. And I just think for someone like him, just let him go out and play. I mean, I talked to Kieran McGinney on Saturday night about Armagh maybe not having more ambition in the game. And he was like, well, it's up to the players at times, in terms of, they have to go and play. And for a player like Clifford, I mean, I can't imagine Peter Keane giving him a lot of advice. I mean, let's be honest. I would just be saying here, if you're in the round of 40, give the ball to that man, hey, if you want to win the match. That's the long and short of it.
Yeah, and what is it about them that pressure doesn't seem to bother them at all?
I think the modern player now, as I say, looking at them and looking at forwards, Shane, it's the way things is coached now. There doesn't seem to be, and going back to that man-to-man thing where it was real, somebody's on your face up pulling and dragging. You can see players spin off now and they're let go. Now, in fairness to Clifford, I don't think anybody wants to let him go, but you see players move out the pitch, get in the areas in where they're coming in the back and moves, which means that you're always kind of in the game. And the pressure of one man to often be the chief scorer isn't really what it is now. You're often a massive spread of scores right across the pitch. Now, in saying that, Clifford, obviously, there is an onus on a player like him to get a lot of scores, but that doesn't bother him because the game now, I think, is opening up to suit them. And as I say, if you look at Clifford years ago, let's go back into my time, the defenders like some Sean Marty Locker, Darren Fraser, Conor Gormley, like they would have a cut at Clifford, I think, in terms of really man marking and players like that. And there seemed to be every team maybe had at least one, which would be good. And I just don't think those players are available now. And if you try and double team them, particularly with a team like Kerry, there's plenty of other lads, as I say, half-backs and everybody in the pitch now can chip in me scores. So you can never detail too many players towards them. But I think the mentality of guys now, and I see it be free takers a lot. And you can remember back to old All-Ireland days, All-Ireland semi-final or final, particularly if somebody was new on the heat that was on the free taker. I always remember the pressure was on the free taker. Kicking from the ground was building. You look at lads now, it doesn't matter. They miss one, they score one. It's straight on, let's go. So I think, yeah, you're right. The mentality has completely changed. And I think the Dubs are at the forefront of that. I look at their players, over this brilliant team. Everyone comes in and out. They all play at a level that doesn't seem to be influenced by what's happening around them. And that's why in crunch games, when it comes down to those final minutes, often against poor Mayo, they are in complete control of that situation because their mentality has led them to that. And of course, success does build that. But every player comes in, fits the mold. And I suppose going back to the once in a generation thing, I mean, Bernard Brogan's tweet about that isn't true because this Dublin team has kept on turning over players, but those players come in with the exact same personality and continuity, which means Dublin have this. They're so difficult to beat them. We're trying to read them now in league games. It doesn't seem to matter to them. Every time I see them, Galway had a cut at them at the weekend. They eventually won the match. But you're thinking, what Dublin team is that? What level are they playing at? And it's scary for everybody else that they have that mentality. And listen, I'm not knocking them for that, but to me, they're so far ahead of everybody else in that. So, well, it used to be years ago in terms of championship, on the day, a team might drop its performance for a smaller side to come in and take them out. And that's rarely happening now. I know we've seen it last year a couple of times, which was brilliant to see around Cork beating Kerry, then Tip beating Cork, and of course Donegal losing to Cavan. But with the Dubs, that just doesn't seem to happen. That on-the-day thing is gone. There's a certain level of talent, a certain level of performance. It's constant with them, which is why they are the team they are.
I'm going to ask you a slightly unfair question then. If you had to pick between one of the two, Conor or Clifford, to be the difference maker for Donegal, and I'll ask you the same for Fermanagh, Declan, who would you take, Con or Clifford, Brendan?
Listen, as much as Con is unbelievable, I mean, at this point, listen, Clifford's the best player Clifford has the potential to be the best player ever played. GA. That's how good that fella is. At this age, for him to be doing what he's doing, I'm just nothing surprises with me. I mean, opening day, the 2-6, the goals that he scored. It's as if he's living some kind of GA dream for all us forwards, how we would have dreamed. So I certainly think, they put everybody against Clifford at this point. It's kind of like Michael Murphy up here, who's the best player ever played for Donegal. He's so far ahead. And I think Clifford is moving into a zone where you'd already think if he keeps going, if he keeps improving, which seems crazy, I think he could be ranked as the best ever.
Declan?
No, there's Brendan has it all squared off there, but we have
Seamus quickly. Becky's going to give away.
Yeah, we get Seamus back in and get rid of Sean, but no.
Sean, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's hard to add anything more than what Brendan's after saying, because when he says that he's reimagined it, he's made young lads dream of what could happen. Like, it's a bit like a few years ago when Eamon Fitzmaurice kept it under wraps about when they went away to Portugal for a warm weather training camp. They put the Gooch at centre half forward for all that training camp, and Kieran Donaghy said in his book that he could have imagined someone like the Gooch playing in the hole for Liverpool, because of his balance and his ability to pick a pass. And then, like, at that point, especially in that semi-final against Dublin, it was almost like, Colm Cooper with the step back and the through ball. I think it was Donica Walsh's goal. He was reimagining even one of the centre half forward, almost like an upgrade on Kieran McDonald type centre half forward player. But, like, we've seen so many different types of full forward. Like, there's been the battering rams and the heavy scorers, and the lads are completely, like, the fellas that were able to do pretty much everything, like a Bernard Brogan. But then someone like a David Clifford comes along, and he's routinely making people, and this is not to sound cruel, but he makes people look really stupid. He makes people look as if they're playing an underage game against him. Like, with even the way he bounces the ball, if you look at it, he's just so graceful. I think maybe it's the grace that sets him apart, and people just love watching it. Like, it's just his ability to actually move. Like, it's enchanting. It's spellbound. When you actually look at it, you cannot take. When you're watching the TV and he's up there in the corner of the screen, you're saying, "Where's Clifford? Where's Clifford?" I don't care where the ball is. Like,
I'm going to give a vote to Condo, which you'll understand as a clubmate, and I'll point out that he's the one collecting All Ireland after All Ireland. He's not necessarily going for that top corner goal unless he absolutely has to. Maybe Tyrone 2018, I think it was, when he buried one in from probably the edge of the area. But other than that, he's the sort of player who just goes head down, straight for goal. And you pretty much know danger here every time he gets the ball. So I think you'll understand that I go for Con.